I remember I had this night, it's such a impactful, you have those moments in your life where like you just like have this awakening or you have this like just aha moment. It's one of those I can still remember laying in my bed. I was living in this house in Oceanside at the time and my kids were asleep and I was sobbing myself to sleep because I was so scared because, I was teaching, I had followed this path. I was teaching nutrition. I had, the very last of, my savings, which wasn't a ton that I was living off of and trying to figure out like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm just draining my accounts just to live. And how am I, I have 2 kids to provide for. How am I going to feed them? How am I going to take care of them if I don't get a regular job? And I didn't want to get a regular job. I had gotten accustomed to this lifestyle of like being the one to drop my kids off, being the one to pick them up, being the one to do homework with them. I didn't want to go back to the 9 to 5 and, leave them in a daycare and have other people raise them. But at the same time, I wanted to provide for them and I didn't want to be irresponsible with money, and drain all my savings. And, so I was having this moment where I was just not trusting. And I remember crying myself to sleep that night, sobbing, just being in such fear. And then after I cried it all out and there was like nothing left to cry, I was like, okay, so we got that out of the way, now let's plan. What do we want? Let's talk about what we want. Let's not talk about what we don't want. And I learned, and in that moment I realized we're so busy figuring out how things won't work that we don't really spend the time planning how they will. And I started to see this everywhere I looked, even with my son. I see it now, but this idea of, well, how am I going to get there? We're so focused on how we're going to get there that we don't ever take the leap.
That was Nastasha McKeon, and this is episode 103 of the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. Welcome back to the show, you guys. I'm Jess, your host, and we have a super inspiring convo for you today. Inspiring in the sense that I think it's going to assist people in taking action on their dreams. And for those of us who are already in the thick of the warrior path, it should shed some bright beaming light on the fact that we are not alone. This path to living purpose will continue to deliver all that it promises, miracles when it seems like nothing will budge, blessings in just the nick of time, brick walls to climb, some with ropes and some without, and a massive requirement of trust. It really does boil down to the trust that there is a bigger plan for all of us and that everything, no matter how it may present itself in the moment, resolves to good. We live in a society that conditions us to count our burdens and not our blessings, to worry that we won't have enough, and to hoard what we do have. And knowing what I know about universal law, these are the opposite things that we should be doing. In fact, they bring us the exact things we don't want. That's why I'm so excited about today's show. Nastasha is a single mom of 3, a passionate vegan, and a vibrant entrepreneur who has been brought to her knees more than once on her road to living her purpose. And finding this purpose all started just after her grandmother passed away when she was 11 years old. This was a woman who Nastasha describes as her light during a very dark time, and so to lose her was devastating, but I believe that even after her death, she was still the light and the one that set Nastasha forth on her warrior path to where she is today. She is the owner of the multi-location organic juicery and vegan meal cafe known to us lucky San Diegans as Choice. For certain, it is easy to look at the view now, having just announced the opening of their 4th location, and think that abundance has always been a cinch. But what we get today is the backstory, the raw moments, the petrifying nights, the sobbing to sleep stories, from cashing out retirement and bank accounts just to make payroll, to the undeniable flow of circumstance falling into place when she went all in to realize her dreams by refusing to have a backup plan. In listening to this episode again in prep for its launch, I experienced all the feels, and I think you will too. Nastasha has such a powerful story, and she is living proof that when we follow our deepest desires, the ones that make us feel absolute truth, the ones that scare the heck out of us, those, that we will be supported by the universe. Now, listen up. That does not mean it's going to be calm waters every day. No way. But if we can adopt the understanding, as our guest today says, that things don't happen to us, but for us, we will see the unfolding of our lives in a new way. And that way is an extremely powerful way to live. And speaking of powerful, Team Yogi Triathlete is kicking it up a notch or two these days. We just got our first win of the season out of Philly. YT athlete Matt put down a smoking fast 17:26 5K for the win last weekend. We got PRs happening all over the place. Susanna crushed her personal best at Boston in a typhoon. Gary crushed his personal best at a 10K in Brooklyn. I crushed my ultra PR by 30 minutes in Mendocino. And today I get to officially welcome Ed to our team. He is training to crush Ironman Louisville, and this guy is no joke. Under Coach Beach's guidance, I'm sure he's going to be blowing away what he thought possible. So the team is growing, you guys. We are on the rise. We got athletes in Utah, California, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Pennsylvania. We got them all over the place, you guys. And if you are looking to join a group of super strong, awake and ready athletes, then drop us a line and let's get your name in the next podcast intro. Oh, yeah. All right. Now, on to the show. Nastasha wants more choice in the world. And with her determination and mindful way of living, there is no doubt in our minds that it will all come to fruition. Listen closely, peeps, because there are many moments of gold in this episode, and stick around for the outro as we'll be offering a sweet bonus from Nastasha and her crew at Choice. I really think you're going to dig this chat, and so without another breath passing by, I give to you the gorgeous and organically awesome Nastasha McKeon.
And my alter ego is like a triathlete, but who I currently am is like a half marathoner.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you've got your hands full because you've got a little baby.
Yes. I have 2 teenagers. I have a little baby, and then work business. So it keeps me busy for sure.
Good thing you're putting high vibes in the body.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you meditate?
I do. Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Mandatory. It's funny. For the last several years, I was into meditation, and I think it finally like hit home, I would say, in the last year, honestly, where, in the past I would meditate when I felt good and I felt like meditating. But then when, life happened and I was going through a rough time, I forgot about all the things that gave me the sanity that I needed. So it's like you discard, like, things are terrible. I can't work out. I can't meditate. I can't do this right now. It's like that's when you need that stuff the most.
It's exactly when you need it the most.
So I finally got that lesson loud and clear last year. So now I'm really committed to like meditation. Just that's like a bar. It's not an option. Yeah, there's no compromise.
Yeah.
Even if I get 10 minutes to myself, whatever it looks like. With a baby, it's a lot harder to find time to meditate. But it's now, there are days when I'll put her in her little playpen and I'll sit in there with her and she'll be climbing all over me and I'm just like able to still find my
That's perfect.
Yeah. So
that's because it doesn't have to be on this fancy pillow.
Exactly.
With things burning around you.
That's what stopped me all this time because it was like, I don't have the right, it's not quiet enough. I don't have the right space. I don't have the perfect little altar set up. I didn't have all the things that I thought that I needed.
And you don't need any of it.
Ironically, this year I've really learned that I've been reading a lot of Joe Dispenza, and I've been just really diving into as much as I can about meditation, Michael Singer's books, just all kinds of.
Oh, Untethered Soul.
Oh my gosh, I'm reading that right now.
That's such
amazing.
a good, that was a game changer for me a long time ago.
For me, the surrender experience was the experiment, and somebody just turned me on to the Untethered Soul, and I just started reading it, and I'm just like, wow, this guy is just gold.
And Michael Singer, I believe I'm speaking correctly here. His wife is Byron Katie.
Okay.
That's the next thing. And
Really?
her book is Loving What Is,
Ooh.
which is all about loving whatever is right in front of you.
That's
loving
amazing.
everything that is coming at you, loving everything that has come past you.
Oh, yes.
And just meeting it. Like, what if we walked through life as if we chose every moment? Because honestly,
100%.
we are choosing it.
We are.
We're creating all the time.
And even the stuff that we think or label as bad is actually good. It's happening for us. And I think, in my personal experience, I guess I can't speak for the world, but for myself, if I look back at all the challenges that I faced in my life, and I've had some intense challenges, but those have been my biggest moments of growth, and they were packaged up differently than the other presents and gifts in my life, but they were equally as valuable as every other gift in my life. All the challenges, even my biggest challenge people, you know, in my life have been my greatest teachers. I've learned the most about myself from facing those, you know, types of situations and people. So I'm 100% on board with all of that.
I love how you just said that. Like it's packaged differently.
Yes.
But it's
still a
just
gift.
as valuable, if not
Absolutely.
more
Yes.
valuable.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
BJ and I are very, very familiar with this. You know, we've gone all in with Yogi Triathlete. Like he quit a really sweet paycheck and we've just gone all in, and because we believe in it. And I go to bed at night like I'm serving my purpose. I'm serving my soul's purpose. I'm writing my soul blueprint. Like I know this for sure. And boy, it has brought us to like, you know, looking at the bank account, and there's $1.59 in it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, what's your relationship to that? And there was a time where that would have freaked me out, and I would have like absolutely wouldn't be able to sleep, and the pressure in the chest, and
I would
BJ,
shut
you have to
down.
get
BJ would be like,
yes. Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, BJ just he's like he's so earth, so he just like shuts down, and I'm fire, so I'm gonna like blow up.
Okay, yeah, I shut down.
Yeah, and so like through those experiences, like realizing like it doesn't, number one, that those things don't define me.
No.
And wow, holy crap, I've learned so much, and I could never have learned this in a book. So if that shows up in the bank account,
absolutely.
I'm calm.
Yeah.
It doesn't change my life. Like
no.
If I'm happy and having a great day,
yes,
why would something like that change my
Not
day,
at all.
my state?
Not
right?
at all. No.
So it's we were just talking about this with our meditation teacher, like there's no way we could have learned this from a book. You have to experience it,
absolutely.
and everybody does.
Yes.
And you're an entrepreneur, so
Yes.
I know you've taken
Oh,
risks.
wow, yes. I mean, those moments that you're describing, there was a time with choice. Not too long ago, actually. We've only been going 3 years and like 10 months or something like that. So we're not even at our 4-year birthday yet. And yeah, there was a time just a few short years ago where I was cashing out, you know, the last of my retirement, the last of my checking and savings account just to make payroll, and not knowing how I was going to make it through the next payroll because we weren't, you know, making money in the beginning, and it was a really scary time for me. But I, like you, I knew that I knew if everything failed 6 months down the road, even the next week, if everything failed, if everything went to hell in a handbasket, I lived my dream. I went after something. You can fail at anything. Why not fail doing something you love? And I got to chase that. And just to even have it for a brief second to live my dream, to me, that was worth every last penny in my bank account for sure. So I completely agree with you on what you just said.
And then I bet you had moments where you just got fuel from a customer that said, oh my God.
And the right time, the right moment.
Right,
I'm at my breaking point.
Not a moment too soon.
Yeah,
it never comes when you think you need it, but right when you're like, oh my God, I don't know how much more I can take.
Yes,
and then it comes in,
absolutely.
you know, like we'll get an email from, you know, we just got this email from this guy, like, and he might even be listening. Hey, Doug in Alaska,
Aww.
you know, and he like bought the cookbook that we wrote, and, you know, he's loving the podcast, and it's like, Doug in Alaska, you're amazing. Like you just filled my heart. You just gave me
the fuel
to
absolutely.
go. It's just, it's such a special experience. And again, what we learn from this. So I have a question, and then we got to tell people what choice is. Although I feel like maybe they already know because we probably have been chugging some of it on the podcast before.
Love to hear that.
Is in those moments where you're like cashing out everything, like all that stuff that you save, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to hoard and save, right?
Yes.
God, you got to have your savings.
Yes, absolutely.
But you can't spend any of it.
No.
Here you are, like going against the grain, like we like to say, like we live against the grain, right?
Oh yes.
And in those moments where you're like writing those checks, and
try telling your investment banker broker that I'm cashing everything out so I can pay payroll next week. Imagine his advice.
How did you get through those moments?
Oh goodness. It's tough to find a simple answer to that. I think for me, my life, like leading up to that point, you know, so I'd have to give a little bit of a background to really make the answer make sense to that. I've gone down the path of chasing a paycheck. I worked in the banking industry for, since I was a baby, like I think it was 8 years I was in the banking industry. And coming from nothing growing up, grew up on food stamps, you know, welfare, saw crazy things, had absolutely nothing. as a, young adult, I was offered this, prominent position in a bank. It was a program where they were going to send us to get licensed and, go through all of these programs. And you were going to be, a distinguished banker when you were all done with it, which I did. And I got in at the right time. And real estate was going up this before the big bubble burst. And I was making great money. I was a kid. I bought my first house at 19, was paying off cars, buying boats and trailers and living the life. But I was so unhappy. From where I came from, that was successful financially, but I wasn't happy. I was in the most miserable marriage. I, went to work every day chasing that paycheck. I, went home. I'd watch TV, put the kids to bed, go to sleep, wake up, do it all over again. And it was like I was a zombie just living in this very plugged in world and doing what I was supposed to be doing. If you can see my hands right now, you'd see the robotic motions
robot alert.
And so I was really terribly unhappy, and I didn't even know I was unhappy because I didn't know what happiness really was. Fast forward a few years, after I had a kind of coming to, Jesus moment, if you will, where I just realized that life was more than, having the house and having the car and having the money in the bank. It was, finding happiness and chasing that happiness. And so I started doing that. I tried to figure out where in life I found my most happiness. And for me, that was in the break room talking about nutrition. So that's, I ended up chasing that, and I had to give up a lot of things along the way. But once I found that and experienced happiness, kind of circling back around to your question, how do I get through those hard times, or how did I get through those really rough nights? Crying because the forecast showed nothing but rain, and we were already negative in the bank account, didn't know how I was going to pay payroll, and, scared to death out of my mind. In the end, it was kind of what I said earlier about just if that was it and that was the end of it, I got to live my dream, even if it was for a period of time. And so I think just knowing that would always kind of give me that wind beneath my wings, and knowing that I impacted the people that I got to impact in that time. I mean, obviously my life word is impact, and I want to do a lot of that. I want to impact a lot of people. But I knew that the people that I had the opportunity to impact, it was going to be lifelong. And so I think that, coupled with just trusting the universe, if you follow your passion, you find your purpose. And that's what I was doing. And sometimes we think, oh, we're here. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And maybe that thing that's here right now falls apart, but that led you to something else. And that led you to something else, and then leads you to something else, So I feel like if you're just following, and for me in those dark times, I'm following my passion. And if I get real clear with myself, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And if the answer is yes, if I'm in integrity and I'm following my passion, I know that even if this all falls apart, something better is going to be on the other side of that. So I just lean into the discomfort, lean into trusting the universe is going to show up for me better than I could have ever imagined for myself. And that's just never failed me.
That is so well said. As far as our yogi triathlete vibe, that is the perfect essence of what we're trying to bring to our audience, is these phenomenal people who just, something is sparked inside of them. And then they just throw everything else away, and they bring all their focus to their purpose.
100%.
So in that, when you're working in that environment, and nutrition sparked a plug, how did the nutrition come in? Is it something you've always loved, or?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I love that question. It's probably one of my favorite answers. My answers are going to be a little bit long, so I apologize, because it's all kind of tied in together.
Yeah, please share.
But when I was 11 years old, I lost my grandmother to an autoimmune disease, and she was at that time the only healthy example and person that had it somewhat together and made sure that I was cared for and provided for in my life at that time. And so I lost a light in a really dark place. And I lost it because of a couple of reasons. One of them was this disease, this autoimmune disease that I didn't understand at the time. And also because I watched Western medicine fail my grandma. And we can get back to that story. It's kind of an interesting story, so we can go back to that later. I don't want to make it an hour-long answer. But when she passed away, I found a book in her room that she never got a chance to read. And it was all about how to heal yourself naturally and how food was medicine. And this was an idea that I had never heard before. And so that planted a seed, and I didn't have the right environment to help, the soil wasn't right, the water wasn't right, the environment wasn't there to help to grow that seed. But over the years, if I heard, oh, soda's bad for you, it's not good, it's not feeding me, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to drink soda anymore. I was 11 years old. I think I gave it up as a New Year's resolution. I never drank it again. And just little by little, I was like, oh, white bread. So I should do wheat instead of white. Okay. So little by little, I would make these little changes as I got little tidbits of, information. So I was the healthiest person I knew at that time. Of course, the healthier you get, the more you attract healthy people. So it's not always the case now. But at the time, I'd be working in the banking industry, and I'd be on my lunch break, and I'd be eating my little quinoa salad with spinach, and people would be like, what's that? And I'd be like, oh, it's this and that. Would try some. It's amazing. And I'd be like, oh, wow, that's really good. Like, why that instead of this? And everything I learned, I was so excited and so impassioned by what I knew. I was like, just wanting to share it. And in the course of, a short period of time, I realized that I was changing people's lives. Just in the lunchroom. I worked with this woman, Jo, at one of the banks that I worked at. She was in her mid to late 50s. She was overweight, diabetic, type 2. And I started giving her some advice just from my own, studying, my own researching. At that time, I wasn't even certified in nutrition. And I just started giving her advice, and she started taking. I started giving her recipes. She started making food that I was making. And in a couple of short months, she was off of her insulin. She'd reversed her type 2 diabetes. She'd lost weight. She was happier than I'd ever seen her. And it was just like, wow. So I had this moment, where I was, taking kind of a tally of my life and trying to figure out where I found happiness. Outside of being a mom, where in my life did I find happiness? And I found it in that break room, because I was so inspired, and I was inspiring people. And I realized if I could do more of that, I could create a lot more happiness in my life. And so that's when I, decided to actually take studying nutrition seriously. It was really hard to find a way to do that, because I was really passionate about plant-based nutrition, and I couldn't really stomach like Western nutrition. And so I ended up taking a holistic nutrition class. And in the class, I thought it was so interesting because they didn't, really follow any nutritional philosophy. They just kind of gave you the information. They didn't subscribe to any one philosophy, but it was so crazy to me because in the book, they would tell you, like, these are all the nutrients you have to consume, and you can't get these, that your body doesn't make them. You have to consume these outside of yourself. Here's where you can get them. Here's the plant list, and then here's the animal list. This one comes with all of these negative effects, and this one doesn't come with any negative effects. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh, so we're all supposed to be plant-based. Like, oh, no. We don't subscribe to any nutritional philosophy. I'm like, but it's right here in the book. If everybody knew this, they would make better choices. Like, I don't understand. What do you mean you don't subscribe to this? Right here, you're teaching this, And so, but then I went on and, took like a plant-based certification. And
how long ago was this?
Gosh.
Just to put a time frame on it.
I would say it was somewhere between 6 and 7 years ago. Probably about like 6. It was about 2 years before I started Choice, and Choice is almost 4 years old. So
2012?
Yes.
2013?
Yes, 2012.
Okay.
It was like when I started studying nutrition.
Yeah.
And I kind of transitioned away from the bank world. I got my real estate license in the interim because out of fear, I was like, I won't make enough money, Right. And so got my real estate license, and I failed at that as well. I didn't really actually ever sell a house.
Because you weren't supposed to.
I wasn't supposed to.
And you did it out of fear.
Yeah. I did it out of fear.
Right, so that's how that works.
Yes.
I've experienced that too. Like, I'm just going to apply for this job.
Yes,
and
because
it's like,
that will,
nobody wants to hire me.
No, it's like,
this is not what I'm supposed to do.
I want to chase my dream, but I don't really trust it yet. That's where I was at the time. And so when I really jumped in and fully trusted it, I remember I had this night. It's such a impactful. You have those moments in your life where like you just like have this awakening, or you have this like just aha moment. It's one of those I can still remember laying in my bed. I was living in this house in Oceanside at the time, and my kids were asleep, and I was sobbing myself to sleep because I was so scared because I was teaching. I had followed this path. I was teaching nutrition. I had the very last of my savings, which wasn't a ton, that I was living off of, and trying to figure out like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm just draining my accounts just to live. And how am I, I have 2 kids to provide for. How am I going to feed them? How am I going to take care of them if I don't get a regular job? And I didn't want to get a regular job. I had gotten accustomed to this lifestyle of like being the one to drop my kids off. being the ones to pick them up, being the one to do homework with them. I didn't want to go back to the 9 to 5 and, leave them in a daycare and have other people raise them. But at the same time, I wanted to provide for them, and I didn't want to be irresponsible with money, and drain all my savings. And, so I was having this moment where I was just not trusting. And I remember crying myself to sleep that night, sobbing, just being in such fear. And then after I cried it all out and there was like nothing left to cry, I was like, okay, so we got that out of the way. Now let's plan. What do we want? Let's talk about what we want. Let's not talk about what we don't want. And I learned, and in that moment, I realized we're so busy figuring out how things won't work that we don't really spend the time planning how they will. And I started to see this everywhere I looked, even with my son. I see it now, but this idea of, well, how am I going to get there? We're so focused on how we're going to get there that we don't ever take the leap. We're worried, how are we going to make that happen? It's not realistic. We should be more realistic. That's what we're told. That's what we're taught from a young age. And I watched this in my son even. Just the other day, he was all excited. He's obsessed with cars. And he was all excited about, like, one day I want to own a machine shop and I want to build cars and I'm going to paint them and do this. I'm like, oh my God, that's so rad, bud. Like, get out a pen and paper, like, design your shop. What's it going to look like? I wanted to get him dreaming up his, his plan, his vision. He's like drawing it up and he's all happy, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check on dinner. I'll be right back. I'm out of the room for maybe 5 to 10 minutes max. I come back and he is sobbing. And I'm like, what's going on, bud? What happened? He's like, I'm never going to be able to make this happen. I don't even know how to do this. And how am I going to get the money for that? And I don't know how I'm going to get there. And I was like, oh my God, it starts so young. Mm-hmm. We don't even let ourselves dream because we're so busy trying to figure out how to make it happen that we lose sight of the vision and the dream. And that's where the juicy stuff happens. That's where the magic is. When you focus on the dream from a happy and excited place, stuff starts to happen. It's that simple.
Because when you're focused on the, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. I'm never going to have the money.
That's what you're attracting. More
right?
of that.
Yeah, that's what you're attracting. But what else is happening is that you're blocking out the higher end of that.
Absolutely.
So everything's got the opposite.
Exactly.
And you're blocking
I
out.
want this, but no, stay back. I want this, but no, stay back.
So we're blocking out the positive because we're stewing in the negative.
Exactly.
And it does start early because there's not a lot of people out there that are whole.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have a lot of unhealed stuff. And like I'm in my mid 40s and my parents were, their parents were like in the Depression, right? So we have this like lineage,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And I feel like BJ and I are like, we're breaking this.
You bring this stuff, you almost are born with this stuff.
And we are totally born with it. And we were raised from parents who were raised from parents who lived in this lack.
Absolutely.
And so the two of us are like, we're ending this.
Good
like
for you.
we already have ended it. Like we've ended it. Like no more.
That's
None
amazing.
of this, no more of this in our DNA anymore.
Good.
We're done.
It's amazing.
And focusing on the higher end of things, because if there's a low end of things, there's a higher end of things.
Absolutely.
And there's so much stuff, and if you can see my hand, it's like up in the air above me. Like there's so much of this high energy that's available to us that nobody's taking advantage of.
We're not tapping into it.
Right, because
Absolutely.
we're living in this fear that we're not going to have enough, and all we're doing is saying to the universe, we're not going to have enough. Now, the universe is super neutral. It doesn't care if you volunteer at the Humane Society. It doesn't care. It's not that it doesn't love you, but it just gives you what you're asking for.
It just works the way that it's just the laws
works.
Of attraction. It's just
the
way that it works.
neutral and it is law, and there's no way around it. So you can volunteer all you want. But if you're living in this lack,
scarcity, fear,
lack,
absolutely.
that's all you're going to get back.
That's all you're going to get back.
And so we can, and the thing that precedes even like our words and things like that is our vibration.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So the universe will hear our words, but if we're saying like, I'm financially independent and free, but I'm still in this like, I'm in this energy of
you can say it all you want if you don't
fear.
believe it. If your body doesn't believe it, you're not going to attract it.
But I do think that that's the first step.
I agree.
I think that's the missing piece of a lot of this law of attraction stuff is like, just match the vibration, change the channel on the radio. And I've listened to so much Abraham Hicks and all that stuff over the years. And I've also found that those have been my biggest nosedives too, when I get too pulled into that kind of stuff. And I'm like trying to create That when I'm trying too hard, the universe is like, you just don't need to try so hard. Like,
it's not supposed to be that hard. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's the missing piece, is that it's not as easy as just turning the radio channel, our frequency. You really do have to change the neural pathways in your brain.
Agreed.
You really do. And I think you have to do that through practice. And so maybe
it's just like working a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it starts as you're, in that fear, but you're saying, I'm financially independent and free.
Yes.
But taking it one step further and really hearing yourself say those things, and then embodying what it's going to be like when you are there, as it's happening right now. Like right now, okay, how does that feel?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of, if anybody's looking for a hack, which I don't think there's any hack in this self, evolution, but like to really start embodying what that life is going to feel like, who you're going to be, what are you going to wear, like what's your day going to feel like when you wake up in the morning and you're living your dream. And there's a line, because I've seen a line at Choice. That line can be very long at Choice, and you would never think. Because let me tell you, there's been times where I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Choice and I'm going to buy myself a juice. And I don't care if it's the last $10 that we have in our account. I'm going to go do it because I feel abundant. And I would go there and there would be a line. Now, I would never look at that and say, wow, there was a time that she cried herself to sleep.
Yeah.
Right? Like you never know what's going on behind the story either. But you're such a beautiful example of that bravery, because it does take bravery.
Takes a lot of bravery. Yeah. Some thick skin, some bravery,
but
lots of trust.
You pointed out such a good thing is that we count our burdens, not our blessings.
Yes, exactly.
And, it's when we're counting our burdens, we're blocking the blessings.
Absolutely.
We can't even see them. So what would be the opposite of that burden that you're feeling, and embody, really embody the energy of that blessing.
What's the next best thing you can reach for? You know, what's that next best feeling? Because sometimes, I try to, people come to me for advice all the time because, from the outside looking in, I'm happy all the time. And I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I am happy pretty much 99.9% of the time. But happiness is something that you practice. It's not something that you just, you're lucky, you're just happy, you're lucky. It's like I have had my hard times and I'll continue to have my hard times. But where I am today, I show up for the good and the bad the same way.
It's your relationship to those experiences.
Yes, exactly.
Can you switch that relationship?
It's really easy to be happy when everything's going your way. It's really easy to be happy when everything's working out. There's a lot of money in your bank account and you've got the love of your life. Like it's really, really easy to be happy. But where the work comes in is, can you be happy when things are falling apart?
Right. When that blessing gets wrapped up a little differently, when it's packaged differently, can you still be thankful? And I was saying that to somebody recently, like BJ and I have had a lot of challenge with this. We've taken extreme risk. I mean, talk about living off your savings. I know all about living off the savings. Which is one more rent payment. But like I said this to someone not too long ago, I said, but I have to tell you, like the smiles are real. They're real. Like the social media is not a farce. Like it's like I was actually doing this. There's a great book called E Squared by Pam Grout, which gives you 9 experiments of universal law that you can do. It doesn't cost you anything. Like you just do them on your own. It's really, really kind of a fun, cool book, and people were talking about it. So I figured I would listen to it. And where was I going with this?
Did you practice one?
I've practiced several, and they have definitely come through. All right, let me back up. Where was I talking about?
We were talking about practicing happiness.
Practicing happiness. The smiles are real.
Yes.
Social media is real.
Social media is real. I don't know where I was going to go with that. Well, if it's important, it will come back. Anyway, maybe it was just to say that book, which is a really cool book, Pam Grout, and it's called E Squared. But yeah, like the smiles are real. We're not putting on a farce here. I know what it was. I was doing it. See, here it is. Woo! Open up to the channel. I was doing an experiment about a blessing. So and you say to, it's just kind of fun. And you say to the universe, like, okay, 48 hours, I'm going to run this experiment. And I said, I'm asking for a blessing. I said, now listen, universe, it's got to be obvious. It's got to be a big one, because There's blessings
everywhere.
a million
It's
times a day in my
amazing.
life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There's miracles everywhere I look in my life. So if this blessing is going to be the one that I'm asking for, I need it to be super obvious.
Yeah.
And it came and it was super obvious. But even in that day alone, there was like a whole bunch of other blessings that were coming. And I was like, no, that's kind of like a regular blessing that I get every day, right?
Yeah.
So like even in the challenge, like I see that there's blessings and miracles surrounding me, within me, everywhere I look.
Absolutely.
They're
And I love that.
everywhere.
And I think that's a good place to start when you're in one of those moments of fear and scarcity mindset. Just like stop everything and just look for blessings. Just start counting your blessings. And from there, you change your vibration.
Yes.
And from there, you are better equipped to receive the things that you're looking for and asking for.
Yeah. All right. So tell us about you've had your sob session, then you're like, all right, Nastasha, let's start planning, girl, because we're not going back.
Yes.
I want to drop my kids off and I want to help them with
Yes.
homework. How does it now become choice?
Okay, so from there, I love part of this story is so fun for me. I was about to lose a small income that I had coming in that was helping me just make it. You know, scratch by, pay my rent, take care of my kids, and it was like exactly $2,000 a month that like was coming in that I needed to survive on, and without having to drain everything and just to like make it, you know, and have the quality of life that I was currently experiencing for the first time, not having to clock into a 9 to 5. I was teaching for scripts. I worked with this group that taught. They were trained by Neil Bernard's
The
Progress Food for
PCRM.
Life, PCRM, yeah.
Yep.
And so I was working with them, and they had a contract to teach at Scripps. And so I was getting to go in and teach plant-based cooking and nutrition classes to the employees of Scripps. I can't even tell you how fearful I was the first time I went in there to a room full of like 30 doctors and nurses. I'm like, what am I going to teach these guys? And then come to find out they loved what we were teaching because they had such a lack of nutritional education. It was crazy. But so I was teaching. I was loving it. I loved my life, and I didn't want to give that up, but I was about to lose this money, and I knew I had to replace it somehow. And so it was this night that I was crying about money and how am I going to do this? I don't want to just go get a regular job, and what am I going to do? And then, I cried it all out, and I was like, I refuse. I'm not going to go get a regular job. I don't care what I have to do. I am not. I'll live in a shack with nothing, but the food for my kids' mouths, like, we don't need this stuff. We don't need any of it. We need our happiness. Like, that's what matters. And I refuse to just go get a 9 to 5. Like, that's the moment where I was like, I'm not going back from here. Like, I'm not doing it. And so I think it was 3 days later, I got invited to a concert with a friend who happened to be the owner of a similar concept to what I do. I'll get into that a little bit more later. We got to talking in the car. We were all sharing a ride down to this concert. And the next morning, she was like, sent me an email. She asked for my email address from the mutual friend. And she sent me an email and verbatim was like, you are the essence of this company. And I want to offer you a contract to come work, 20 hours a week. You can make your own hours. You can work anytime you want. And it will pay you $2,000 a month. And I was like, are you kidding me? To the dollar, the income I needed to replace showed up in exactly the way, but it didn't happen until I refused. If it was in the back of my mind and heart that I was going to have a backup plan, a plan B, that wouldn't have happened.
But you have to be backed into a corner almost.
But unwilling to give.
Yes. I can totally relate to that. Like, that is what I need. Like, I have deadlines. I was a web designer in a former life, and it's like you have these deadlines. And I would just, and this, like, I have like 2 months to build it. I'd do it the week before. I'd stay up all night and just like push because I need to be up against a wall.
Yes.
And that's where, when you find out what your groove is, like, that's where you need to be because that's going to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in your refusal was surrender.
Yes.
Yeah.
That refusal was
agreed.
Was
it was surrender
It was surrender disguised as refusal.
It was.
Because your words were, and I've had these same words, like, I will do whatever I need to do.
Yes.
Like, I'll do whatever I need to do to continue to live what I know is right for me.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what it is. It's not like, well, I want to live the way, but I've got this and this and this and this, these things that, I can't. You were just like, I will do whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
Full surrender. Mm-hmm. And then the strong will of like, because I refuse to leave this path that I know is right for me.
Exactly. And it's funny, going back to what we were talking about earlier, in this situation, I walked into this place the first time and it said, let food be thy medicine. And I was like, I'm home. Like, this is it. This is where I flourish, And so when things started to fall apart there, because there were things that were out of integrity for me, and I'm all about integrity. That's, if there's no integrity, I can't do it. And I came up against a wall there, and there were things that I wasn't okay being a part of, and just to give you a little bit of context, but, things that were being called organic that were really not, and, things that were on the Dirty Dozen list, and I'm so passionate about organics. And so there were things, and I tried so hard, but my voice kind of fell on deaf ears. And so I had this moment there, a few months in after my perfect situation, and I'm like, oh no,
Now I have to walk away from the exact amount of money I needed.
Exactly.
Now it can't possibly come again.
Exactly. And here I thought, like, no, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do. Like, this is my it, And why isn't this working?
Oh, you feel
I didn't
that
even
misalignment,
know.
though.
Yeah,
you feel
it. But that's all of the, like I said, all of the things we label as good or bad, like, they're all for us. My time there taught me so much that I needed I was supposed to be just consulting, giving recipes, have a pretty mellow gig, but I ended up working a lot of hours because the place was so poorly managed and they needed so much help, and people were crying every day. It was a total, pardon my expression, but shit show. And so I jumped in and I was like trying to save everyone and save everything. And, things just kept falling. You plug one hole, another one pops up, plug that hole, another one pops up. And, and so again, I had that conversation with the universe and was like, okay, universe, like, it was exactly what I asked for, with exception, like, now what? So I was like, well, maybe I can find something like this elsewhere. And I started looking and it didn't exist. And so I was like, I want to do it myself. I want to do it because I want to do it the way I would do it. I want to do it with integrity. I want to do it with heart, with purpose. For me, it's never been about the money. I already had that. For me, it was about following my purpose and making an impact. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. And I didn't feel like I was going to do that at a place that was being operated just for monetary reasons and didn't have the integrity. And so as soon as I said those words to the universe, it's like, be careful what you ask for. Ironically, we mentioned earlier, we have somebody we know in common. And literally the week that I said out loud that I was going to do it, he called me to tell me that the detox lounge was for sale downtown, like out of nowhere. Somebody that just knows I'm in the juicing industry and what have you, just like, hey, there's this juice place for sale downtown. And I was like, okay. So, I started just following these little leads I was getting. And then, there wasn't one that I could buy that was exactly what I wanted to create. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to create my own, And then it was like, people started knocking on my door like, hey, do you have any interest in this spot we're looking at leads? I mean, it was just crazy the way that things unfolded. When you're on the right path, It's not to say that there's not going to be some roadblocks along the way and you're not going to have to push through and be challenged. But there is flow. It's like there are these little signs that like you cannot deny that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's really, that's how Choice was born. I said it out loud one day and then people just started showing up in such a way. It was mind blowing. Like, I really love this spot in Carlsbad. I used to drive by it every day. It was closed half the time. And I always had a dream of doing something with it.
Was there a container?
There was a container.
Before?
Container. It was brown and there was just lawn chairs out there, like just plastic lawn chairs, and like the landscaping and the big tree and the wall garden, all that stuff wasn't there. And it's just a big empty lot.
So to
closed
give
most
people
of the time.
some context,
the first store, is a shipping container.
Yeah. So in Carlsbad, we have this sweet little village, which is so amazing for this gorgeous little beach town, and there's old buildings and it's really, really quaint. But then you've got this like corner lot.
Yes.
Up until
I
recently,
call it our mini little Central Park. Yeah.
Yeah, like up until recently, you had like this whole nice
5,000 square foot lot. Yeah.
5,000 square foot lot with a tree, and it was like
I actually had that thing craned in. It was like a 150-year-old olive tree, and then we had a big community table built around it with recycled wood. Put in that beautiful wall garden and the mural project. We got the city of Carlsbad to agree to, and just created really a sanctuary there.
Yeah, and then Choice Juicery itself is a container.
Yes.
So that container, what was it before?
It was a waffle place. I think it was called Boxed. I think it was called
So you're driving by and you're
Yeah.
and you're looking at this and
Well,
you're
most of the time it's just this shipping container closed up. It was rarely ever open, and occasionally, you know, there'd be like 2 or 3 people in the lot, like on plastic chairs, and it just like I just felt like it was so underutilized for what it could be in this prime spot in the middle of the village.
Could you see it? Could you see?
Oh,
did
yeah.
you see a vision?
Yes, I definitely saw a vision, and my heart was in that place. So when I was speaking to somebody about it, when I was like, God, I'd love that little space over, you know, on the corner, and they were like, oh, I know that person. Let me reach out and see if they're interested in selling it. And then they did, and he came back and he was like, no, I'm not interested in selling it. And so I was like, bummer. So we started looking at other places, and I started moving on another location. It didn't feel right, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to stop. That's a roadblock. I'm not going to stop there. I set my intention. That's what I wanted. But just because I can't have that, I'm still going to, keep going. And so I found another spot further down on State Street. I wasn't that excited about it, but I was like, I'm supposed to be doing this, so moving forward. And I think it was like the night we were supposed to go in and present the idea to the board of like the city. It was like a city-owned facility. We got a message from the guy like, I'm ready to sell it, but you have to buy it this week. And at this point, I didn't even have a logo. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a menu. I didn't have anything.
Don't you love how the universe, like, sometimes it makes you, like, you're about to go present it to the city, and it's like, sometimes the universe makes you do all this legwork.
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't even need to do this, but you very much did need to do it.
There's a reason for all of it. Absolutely.
So funny how it
Absolutely.
works.
Yes. And so, so I said yes. I, cleaned out, my savings account, and, we had to buy the container. And then after we bought the container, we thought that the lease was transferable. That's what we were told at the time, and from the person who I purchased the container from. And so then we found out it wasn't, and that the lease could be terminated upon transfer. And so I had to track down the landlord, who's now, I would call him a friend of mine, but at the time wouldn't give me a meeting. And here I am already like signing paperwork. I already own a container and I don't have the land that it's on. And so I found out he was going to be like at the wine bar down the street one day. We knew the owner of the wine bar, and so I literally showed up there and just was like, hey, but thankfully I won him over and he gave me the lease. So it was all kind of, from there, it was just like magic. I mean, I had this dream for this wall garden on the wall. I just had this vision for it. I knew that wall needed a wall garden. I wanted it to be in recycled pallets. I didn't know how to do that. I knew nothing about succulents. I knew nothing about wall gardens. I knew nothing about any of it.
And if anybody has our cookbook, we have a picture.
No
of that.
way. Are you serious? Oh, that's
Both of
awesome. I
us
can't wait to see.
are,
Please.
Yeah, because we walk by that all the time, and it's just a tranquil, like perfect spot to just.
Right?
And right next to it's a street, like a
Yes,
busy street. So
yes.
you can it's just like a few feet
You should
over.
see. I wish I could put a camera on there just to catch people's reactions as they stop and like really take in the beauty of it every time.
And read
Yes.
the
So
Oh
we
my
have-
gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I hope that was okay. We took
God,
pictures.
of course that's
Is this okay? We took pictures.
Oh my
and-
gosh, that makes me want to cry. That is incredible.
Yeah, so if you have our cookbook, the wall garden that
love
we're
it.
talking about is on page 48 and 29.
I love
and
it.
If you don't have the cookbook, then you need to get the cookbook.
I'm gonna have to
Yogi
agree with
Triathlete Cookbook. Amazon. Okay, so you have this vision.
So I had this vision for this wall garden, and it's coming down to the wire. Like, we're within days of our grand opening. Like, it's like a pre-party for, invite like 100 friends and family, and you're testing out the menu, you're testing out all those things on these people. And so this party is like within days. And at this point, I've already had the guy who's doing most of like the work for me on the lot go with me, pick out pallets. So I decided on the pallets that the wall garden was going in. I even decided on where I was going to put it and had them affixed to the wall. But I had no idea how I was going to get the wall garden in there. It was within like 2 days, and I'm like, this has to be done before the grand opening. I want people to really, felt like that really completed it, And so I remember,
as opposed to just having 2 pallets.
yes,
on
just
the side
hanging
of
out on the wall.
wall.
Yeah. There's like 6 up there, so it was a big empty. Yeah, it would have been a little weird. And so it was so funny. It was like 2 days before, and I get this phone call one day. It was a voicemail. And I just had gotten done saying, I need to figure out how I'm gonna, who I'm gonna have help me do the wall garden. And I look down, I see I missed a call, and there's a voicemail, and I like put the voicemail, and I don't even remember who was in the car with me. Someone was, and we both laughed as we listened to it, because it was like, after we had been having a conversation, how things just keep working out. It's just crazy, like things just keep working out. And this guy calls, and he's like, "Hi, my name's his name was Kevin. Hi, my my name's Kevin. He's like, I was just in line over at the coffee shop down the road, and I overheard someone saying that they're going to put a wall garden in, at that space in Carlsbad, and I do wall gardens, and one of them happened to know you, and they gave me your contact. I hope it's okay that I called you, but I'd love to help you with your wall garden. And I'm not kidding you. That's how everything works out with choice.
Flow.
I mean,
Flow.
it just flow. I mean, the craziest stuff we have pulled off. You wouldn't even, I could tell you story after story after story of the things that just like the most impossible feats before us. And we have no idea how we're going to make it through. And just like, and the girls that work with me tell me all the time, like, you got someone looking out for you. Cause and we all do, it's called the universe. But things just keep working out, in the final hour when you really think you don't know how you're going to pull it off. It's just amazing what's come through to make this vision become what it is and to help us to make the impact that we're trying to make on the world. So it's been really rad.
Let me just go right to the question then. What is the impact you're trying to make on the world?
Well, I have a few big passions in life. I would say number one is I'm a passionate vegan, and I care a lot about the whole vegan movement. Not just because of my own personal health, although I think it's the healthiest diet. Everything I've read and studied says it's the healthiest diet, and my personal experience has been that. But also have a deep, deep place in my heart for the animals and, the animals and what they're going through, to wind up on our plates. And so that's a huge one for me, but then also the impacts on the environment. And so for me, it's like all of those three things I feel like I have a direct effect on all of those things by the choices that I make about what I put in my body. And when I got to open up choice and also get to impact, even if it's, one meal that person made that day, they made a good choice for themselves, they made a good choice for the planet, and they made a good choice for the animals with that one meal. So for me, every meal that we serve out of choice is making a positive impact. For me, I would say I believe that that's why I'm here, is to help to spread this movement. And choice is that stepping stone for me. It's that, platform for me to disseminate that information. We're not very vocal, I would say, necessarily about, you don't go to the counter and the girls aren't, beating you over the head with the vegan Bible by any means.
It doesn't say vegan on
It doesn't even say vegan on the menu. I think we have a little icon on a couple of things, but it says plant-based. And the reason for that is from back in my banking days, I learned a lesson really early on into my vegan career. I think it was 2 weeks in, to be exact, but I went vegan around Christmas time, and we had a holiday party, and I was known for making really good food, and the expectations were high. And so I brought in these amazing chocolate chip they were chocolate chip oatmeal cookies, and they were vegan, but I was kind of, I was afraid of questions. I was so early into it. I just had, been exposed to some ideas, and I was wanting to make that change, but I wasn't ready to commit out loud. I just wasn't doing it yet. I wasn't eating anything else. I was just strictly vegan, but not committing for forever yet, and dabbling, I guess you could say. And so I made these cookies, but I wasn't vocal. I didn't want to tell everyone they were vegan because I was afraid they were going to ask me questions and I wouldn't know how to answer them. So I just put them in the back with all the other food and didn't say a word. I went back to 30 minutes later, they were gone. Everybody devoured these cookies. And all night long, they were like, I got to get that recipe from you. Those were so good. I love those cookies. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So then a couple weeks later, it's New Year's Eve, and we have another holiday party, and I'm so excited because at this point I'm decided this is a forever thing. I'm ready to be more vocal about it and open about it, and I've even told a few people at this point. And so I bring the same cookies, only this time I'm I brought some vegan cookies. Nobody ate them. Nobody ate them. They're the same cookies that everybody loved the week before. I'm what are you afraid of? It's a banana that makes it, instead of an egg, it's a banana. Do you eat bananas? What are you afraid of? But I realized that it still had a very negative connotation, especially back then. And so when I decided to open Choice, even though everything on our menu is 100% vegan, for me, I didn't want to scare people away before they had an opportunity to try it, and I felt if I was so vocal and it was all over your face, I felt people might not give it the chance. And that's really been my experience. So many people, I would say 80% of our clientele is not vegan, but they make vegan choices every time they're at our store. And I think, a big part of that is they're not turned off by it because before they can make an idea in their minds about what it's going to be or taste like or feel, they don't have this expectation. And then they have it, they enjoy it. And then if they find out after the fact it's vegan, there's no qualms about it.
I was just going to say, I think one of the the biggest draws, in my opinion,
Yeah.
as the walk by traffic,
Yeah.
is that one smoothie bowl amazing photo
Oh,
that you guys have out there, because
Yeah.
it just shows like color. I think people, and it's normally warm here,
Yes,
right? 70s
yes,
and warm.
normally, yeah. With
So
the
these-
exception of today, rainy day.
I was out there for quite a while in the rain. It was like raining and not raining. Yeah, I experienced that. But I think that's such a great point. Like and we'll put photos up of your place, but it's just like super white. There's a touch of green
Yes.
on your logo, black and white. And then it's the color of the succulents.
Yeah.
And it's that board right on the corner there, especially during the farmer's market.
Being
like,
healthy never tasted so sweet. And the
Yeah.
picture
It's
of the
amazing.
bowl.
Well, and why do we have to? It's not like we're trying to trick people.
Yeah.
And I realized I published a book that doesn't say vegan.
No kidding.
Like inside, it talks about plant-based and, because
Right,
I have like
yes,
4 chapters,
yes.
like how do you thrive on a plant-based.
Yes.
But if you look at the cover, it just says high vibe recipes.
Beautiful
Like
cover.
high vibe recipes for the athlete appetite, right? Like, and that's our pizza that's in there. It's
Yes.
incredible. And it's
Looks
not like I'm trying to
amazing.
trick people. I actually didn't even realize that it didn't say vegan on it. People were
Right.
asking me, like, is your cookbook vegan? And I realized, like, oh my gosh, it doesn't even say that it's vegan.
Yeah.
Because to me, being vegan is no big deal.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
It's the norm for
Right.
you.
It's
Yes.
the norm
Yes.
for me. And I feel like it's safe.
Well, you don't see non-vegan cookbooks saying non-vegan
Right.
cookbook.
Exactly.
This is a meat book. Like,
Right.
no, it's just a cookbook.
Yeah, and if you go, we stay. We'll be going up to Mendocino next month, and I don't know if you've heard of this place called the Stanford Inn.
Really?
It's basically a vegan inn up
Really?
in Mendocino, right on the coast.
No
Absolutely
kidding.
amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Super dog friendly. Clark, by the
Wow.
way, is Whole Foods plant.
That's
He's totally
amazing.
vegan,
Yeah.
thriving, and yeah, and so you look at their menu and it will say like, let's say, ravioli with mozzarella and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, as like a
Yes,
paranoid
yes.
vegan, you're
Always
like,
have to ask.
and you don't want to, but it says right at
Yes,
the bottom, all of our recipes are plant-based.
Yes.
So, but then your mind starts going a
Oh,
little
yes.
crazy, but they don't make
do
a
they
big
really
deal
know what
out of
plant-based
it. Like,
means? Do they know the
why does-
definition? Yeah.
Yeah, and like,
Right,
why
yeah.
does mozzarella mean that it's, the secretion from an
Exactly.
animal?
Yes.
Like, why can't it
yes.
be a nut
like that lawsuit that went around because they were calling like a plant-based mayonnaise or
Yeah.
something like that, and
Right.
also the milks. Exactly same thing. It's like, why did they get like why
do they get the market on milk? Like,
yes.
milk is the juice that comes
Yes.
from something that like
Yes.
it can be a nut. It
Yes.
can be what?
I was just gonna say the one story that we went up to Fort Bragg to get that dinner at Pizza Hut because we just wanted pasta.
It wasn't Pizza Hut. It was. Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we don't eat at Pizza Hut.
It was
It was like this local little like
Right.
pizza. I mean, it might as well have been Pizza Hut. But
Okay.
it was just like this local.
You were
Yes.
preparing for a race, and so we just wanted simple pasta and red sauce.
Yes.
And we ordered, and we just were
Carb
like,
load.
we don't need the cheese. They're like, sure, you don't
They were
need
like
the cheese.
deer in the headlights.
Like, yeah, we don't need the cheese.
Deer in the headlights.
It took 15, 20 minutes because it must have been a busy weekend. Maybe half an hour. It was like the longest
They
thing.
were probably just like, I don't understand, no cheese.
Yes.
And then they served it up.
And it had the cheese on it.
Oh my
like
gosh.
twice.
Oh my gosh.
So they just, it didn't
Yes.
connect. The
Yes.
connection wasn't made. They heard
No,
us. but-
yeah, it's still absolutely. I know it's so funny. This is a little bit unrelated, but it just shows you.
Yeah.
I took my kids up to Big Bear to go snowboarding. I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, and we always most of the time we're packing our food everywhere we go, like because especially in a mountain town like that, like it's really hard for me to pay a lot of money for like a side salad, that I could make at home so much better
With love.
Yeah, with love. Yeah. Then a chef who's like cursing as they throw together like this, salad with all these modifications. And so we're up there and we were on the mountain one day and the kids were like begging me for, I don't know what it was that they wanted, something that I wouldn't normally give them, like French fries or something like that. And I was like, okay, fine. They broke me after a long time of begging. And so I was going to let them like have a cheat and like go get some French fries. And so we're like going down to this like cabin thing and or the little, place on the mountain where they basically only have fried foods or like all they have, which I learned is actually all they have. But I'm in the line and I asked the lady, I'm like, do you guys have like a little side of like fruits and vegetables, like a little side of like fruit and veggies? And she was like, we're not that fancy here. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it was like as if you would, it was as if I asked her for like something, like, so just a side of like, I'll take a carrot, but it was considered fancy to have like just like a side of just veggies and couple pieces of sliced fruit. It was just shocking me, but it just goes to show you, you know, how people are so uneducated about food as
food and
medicine
food,
and just food in
is,
general. Yeah. What is vegan? What is, you know, what does that even mean? What is plant-based? I hear people all the time, like, I'm 100% plant-based. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yeah, I just do a little bit of chicken, a little bit of fish. And I'm like, I think we have a different definition of plant-based. So, you know.
And it does get a little tricky. I went to a vegan academy in New York City last fall, and it was really all comprehensive, just beautiful, 5 or 7 day, I think 7-day academy that I went to. And there was a lot of ethical vegans there. And there was a lot of people who are just so hardcore about not using plant-based. And like for BJ and I, like if an athlete wants to come and coach with us, right? Like, but they're not ready to go. I want to be inclusive.
Yes.
I want to be inclusive.
Yes.
Like they're curious about it.
Yes.
But they're not, you
ruin
had that
progress for perfection is like the term that comes to mind, you know?
And so I don't necessarily agree with that. I want to be inclusive.
Absolutely.
I want to be welcoming of all things, all people, all belief systems. Like I see that, like it's perspective, and we're talking about breaking patterns and rewiring our brain.
Absolutely.
And I want to be as supportive as I possibly can.
Absolutely. I always, you know, if somebody even wants to one meal a week, it's like, let's reward that. Let's celebrate that. That's one meal a week where they're making a great choice for everybody. Like, rather than be like, that's not enough. You know, I definitely agree with, you know, progress.
Progress, not perfection.
Yes.
So going back, because I can't even believe it, we're almost like at an hour.
I know, I can't believe how
so fast. But going back, I want to touch upon, so you found this book in your grandmother's room after she had passed. So you had said that there was an interesting story there, and I want to, can you share that story?
Yeah, so, you know, grandmother light in a very dark place. She had an autoimmune disease called scleroderma, which basically means turn to stone. It affects different parts of your body, and so it basically basically turns it to stone essentially. So my grandma was 50, I think.
It's like a horrible fairy tale.
Terrifying.
It's like a terrible
I know.
thing.
And so it affected her lungs. So she basically looked like she had lungs of like a 90-year-old smoker. She was 52 and she never smoked a day in her life. So her lungs were just like completely destroyed by the age of 52. And so she was, diagnosed, and really quickly, like she went downhill. I mean, in a matter of months, she was like on an oxygen tank, like could barely get around. And then, they gave her a prescription to help with the symptoms of her disease. And one of the side effects of that medication that they gave her was a heart attack. And so she, one night, thought she was having a heart attack. She called 911. They came out. They checked her vitals. They said she was fine. She demanded. She was very stubborn, as am I. And so she demanded that they take her to the hospital, and they did. But, when they check them into triage, and here's her vitals, she's fine. So they put her in triage and came back to check on her 45 minutes later, and she was already in cardiac arrest, and she died. And so hearing that story, as a 11-year-old little girl, that not only did my grandma have this disease, and the people that were supposed to help her didn't listen to her, and then she died because of the complications of the medication that they gave her to treat her disease.
None of that makes sense.
None of it made sense to me. And then literally within a couple of days, I was cleaning out her room, and I found this book about how food is medicine, and she never got to read the book.
It was for you,
but it really was. It definitely was. I mean, that planted a seed. And so my whole life, as I said earlier, I was so interested in health and wellness and nutrition because I saw somebody who she never got the chance. I think if she had been given the chance to read that book and to make those choices for herself, she would have, and she didn't get to make those choices. And so for me, I guess it's kind of like, I feel like I'm carrying some sort of a torch in some way, the legacy of her life to me, and doing the work that I do is in some way, I hope, impacting people and inspiring people to make better choices for their health. And who knows what that ripple effect will create. But that's definitely one of the most impactful things, I would say, watching what happened to her.
That's so beautiful. That was all for you, for you to have this purpose
Absolutely.
Unfold, like so beautiful. And I don't think we know fully the service that we're in of other people when we live our purpose, when we start to follow that,
right?
And the example that we're living. And I always say to people, like, just keep living the example, keep living the example. Like that is being in service of other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's,
Well, that's
beautiful.
the ripple effect. I like that you mentioned
Yeah.
that. So speaking of the ripple effect, like choice, where's the vision of choice? Let's just wrap that up.
Yes,
because we're
please.
close. Yeah.
So we opened our first store in 2014. I think it was 9 months later, we opened our second store, which is kind of ironic how that came about. I got hit with 3 lawsuits my first 6 months of being in business. Almost sank us among, poor food costs, no idea how to run labor numbers, no idea what COGS were. I had no idea what I was doing when I started. And it's so funny. They say, like, if you knew then what you know now, I probably would have never jumped because I had to learn everything on the job,
I just went to my accountant today and I was like, so here's all our stuff. You're definitely going to need to be calling us. I know you're going to have questions. And that form that you told me to fill out, I have no idea what that form is or how to fill it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, but, we're doing well.
Yeah.
We're doing better than last year. So, yeah, I totally get it.
Yes. So, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with
So
that?
your second
Second store,
store.
yes. So second store came about because one of the people who was actually trying to sue us for trademark infringement because we have the continents as they exist, in back of our logo. There was a juice company that had the continents, it was like Pangea, made up of fruits and vegetables, and then the name of their company after it. And so they thought that we were infringing on their trademark, so they hit us with a lawsuit. One of the 3. And a couple months later, of course, we shut it out. There was no possibility of confusion. It was so different, but it still costs a lot of money to deal with that stuff, unfortunately. And so a couple short months later, we got, I was talking to a gym owner that I knew in the same center as that juice company, and they were asking me to collaborate with them on a cleanse program for their New Year thing. And I was like, I would love to, but you guys have a juice company in your center, and I've already had some challenges with them, and I don't want to step on their toes. They're like, oh no, they shut their doors last week. They're closed. And I was like, what? So I was like, why would they put me through that if they were just going to shut their doors? So I actually, ironically, I had the guy's contact info because of the lawsuit.
Because he sued you.
Because he sued me. So I was able to call him and be like, hey.
Hey, new subject matter.
Yes. So in the end, he ended up helping me get that location. So ended up being beautiful. Another perfect example of how the things that seem to be happening to us are always happening for us.
You could have totally gone down the other path so easily.
Absolutely. So that store came about in 2015. And then that's about the time I started figuring things out. I hired a consultant who had been in the restaurant industry for years, and he's just incredible, and he's taught me pretty much everything I know about running a business. And so he came on board and really helped me to figure things out. We, stopped the bleeding and learned how to tweak things and, change our, stuff around so that we could actually keep our doors open and pay our bills, which was great. And then in 2016, we had the opportunity to open up our third store, Del Sur. So we opened that one up. I was, I think, 8 months pregnant when we opened the doors, single, 9 months pregnant, and doing, a full build out by myself, which was pretty crazy, but we did it, pulled it off, got that opened. And then this last year, we opened up our new kitchen facility. So we moved out of a 300 square foot kitchen, which we produced all of our food in for all 3 stores, into a 2,000 square foot kitchen. And now we are in negotiations with our 4th location right now. We should be hopefully signing the lease in the next 2 days. So.
Is it top secret or where
it is
that?
still?
That's great.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I don't like to say anything until the lease is signed,
Sure.
but it's pretty much a done deal. But just to make sure that we protect the location until the lease is signed.
Absolutely.
But it's in San Diego still. But yeah, so that'll be our 4th. What is the vision for choice? For me, I want more choice in the world. I want to be everywhere where they need high quality, organic, kitchen that provides high quality, high energy food and nutrition with integrity. I create a lot of joy in my life by doing what I do and making the impact that I do. And I feel like the team that I'm blessed to work with, they do the same. I feel like we all vibe off of each other, and we all bring so much to the table. And being able to grow that team of conscious, amazing, incredible human beings and get to watch as we said earlier, the ripple effects from internally, but also like externally, you know, what the impact that we make on the world and our little community just blows my mind. And I want to do a lot more of that. So what does that look like? You know, in my perfect world, you know, we'd have choices all over the country. I used to say that I wanted to be the Starbucks of my industry, not because I want to be anything like Starbucks, but I just want to be everywhere like Starbucks. And I feel like every time we open a choice, that's one less McDonald's in the world, you know? So I want to do a lot more of that.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nastasha.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I feel like we could go forever.
I know, definitely.
I feel like we always say that.
When the new shop opens,
yes,
we can do some
I would love that.
follow-up.
Yeah, anytime. This was absolutely lovely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Awesome, right? Are you motivated to get out of your comfort zone just so you can lean into the discomfort? This convo has given me great oomph to charge full speed ahead in life. If you want a little more from our guest today, then get over to Patreon. We have a great extra with her that is already up there for our supporters of $5 or more a month. We dive into her powerful plant-based story that includes some interesting information that may shift your perspective. And if you're local, mention this podcast and get yourself a free boost for your smoothie or bowl ASAP. Thank you, Choice, for hooking up our local audience. We are so grateful to Nastasha for sharing so generously with us and for each one of you guys for tuning in. If you're looking to support the show, but financially is just not your jam, then please share this podcast with your communities. Leave a review on iTunes and use our Amazon banner ad in the blog post for this episode on yogitriathlete.com. None of these things cost you a thing, not 1 cent, and they assist the YTP in gaining the ground necessary to further our mission to create a better world. So go in, get still, inquire about what you love, notice what makes you feel alive, and follow those breadcrumbs. It may be scary. It may be uncomfortable, and it's almost always steeped in the unknown, but allow yourself to dream and spend a little time every day in that infamous land of the unknown, the land where limits do not exist, where purpose is commonplace and where possibility is reality.